On my grandson's 7th birthday, my daughter-in-law snatched my place card away from the seat next to him and muttered coldly, "Go sit over there," even though the chair right beside Leo remained completely empty. I was banished to a makeshift table at the very back of the room, squeezed right against the kitchen door. In that exact moment, watching the door swing back and forth, I made a silent promise to myself this would be the absolute last time I ever let them humiliate me. "Go sit over there," my daughter-in-law, Brooke, whispered, smoothly sliding my place card away from the main family table. The chair right next to my grandson, Leo, remained empty, but my plate was banished to the absolute farthest corner of the room, right against the kitchen door. It was Leo's 7th birthday, and the house was packed with guests. But suddenly, it felt like the entire room had gone dead silent. My son, Garrett, looked away immediately, staring intently at a bottle of San Pellegrino on the counter, refusing to say a word. Brooke offered a cold, superficial smile, set a bowl of potato salad down in front of me, and immediately turned her back to greet the wealthy neighbors who had just walked into the living room. In that moment, I didn't feel the urge to cry or cause a scene. Instead, a deep, icy clarity washed over me. I looked down at my hands and realized that my days of being the sweet, disposable grandmother to this family were officially over. For years, I had run myself ragged for them, juggling schedules, running errands, and quietly keeping their lives running smoothly in the background. But this calculated public snub in front of the entire extended family was the exact moment everything changed for me. I stayed seated, quietly ate my piece of cake, and watched the party unfold like a total stranger. No one noticed when I reached into my purse and pulled back my heavy ring of spare keys, which I usually left on the kitchen counter just in case they needed a backup. As Leo opened his presents, I watched Brooke carelessly toss my expensive Lego collector set into a dark corner, while the room erupted in applause for a cheap coloring book brought by Brooke's mother. I finished my coffee, stood up without a single word of regret, and walked out of the house before the first guests even thought about leaving. Walking to the bus stop in the crisp air, I felt like I could finally breathe for the first time in months. The era of my silence was over, and that quiet ride home on the Route 42 bus was the first mile of my new life. The second I got home, I sat down at my kitchen table, flipped on the small reading lamp, and pulled out my old pocket calendar along with my bank statements from the past 2 years. I didn't want to rely on gut feelings anymore. I wanted cold, hard numbers. As I flipped through the pages, the endless scribbles stared back at me. Tuesday, pick up Leo from daycare. Thursday, pick up Garrett's grocery order. Saturday, mow the kids' lawn. Then my eyes adjusted to the monthly automatic transfers and the emergency checks I had written for Brooke's supposedly dire utility bills. Totaled up, I had handed them over $5,000 in the last year alone, always telling myself I was just helping a young family get on their feet. But the reality looked entirely different. They were using hard-earned money to fund luxury getaways to Cancun, while I was clipping coupons and scanning the grocery store flyers for sales in a small tin box in my hallway. I kept the spare key to their suburban home, the one they had given me, so I could let the contractors in early in the morning before they went to work. I took the key out and dropped it onto the wooden table with a sharp, heavy thud. Logging into my online banking, I saw that the next automatic transfer for Leo's alleged college fund was scheduled to go through tomorrow. It was an account that Garrett had let slip last week was no longer even accessible for the child. Brooke had quietly redirected the funds to cover the monthly lease on her luxury SUV, without a shred of hesitation. My finger hovered over the screen and hit delete. The transfer was gone, wiped out with a single click. It was a small, silent action, but the first domino had officially fallen. When I finally went to bed, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, completely unburdened by the weight of their expectations. On Monday morning, I woke up at my usual 6 o'clock, but instead of rushing out the door to catch the bus to the grocery store to do the weekly shopping for Garrett and Brooke, I stayed right where I was. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and simply enjoyed the profound quiet of my apartment, right at 8 o'clock on the dot. My phone began to buzz violently against the tabletop. Brooke's name lit up the screen. I let it ring 3 full times before picking up, deliberately omitting the apologetic, rushed tone I usually used with her. "Hey, you're home anyway, right? Can you pick up Leo from daycare at 1 today and grab our groceries on the way? I'm completely slammed and just can't make it work," she said, using her usual demanding, transactional tone. "No, I won't be doing that anymore," I replied calmly, setting my coffee cup down. Absolute dead silence fell over the line. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the faint hum of traffic on her end. "Excuse me. You know how incredibly stressful our schedules are right now. Who is supposed to handle this on such short notice?" she snapped, her voice instantly sharp and blindsided. "You're an adult, Brooke. You'll figure it out like an adult," I said, keeping my voice completely level. I hung up before she could utter another syllable and immediately put my phone on silent. I walked into the hallway, slipped the spare key to their house into a small padded envelope, slapped a stamp on it, and dropped it into the blue mailbox at the corner of the street. Just like that, the physical link to their household was officially severed. On my way back, I stopped by the local bakery and bought 2 fresh cinnamon rolls entirely for myself. The first major tear in their perfectly managed, entitled routine had been ripped open, and they were about to realize exactly how much heavy lifting my quiet hands had been doing for them. It took until exactly Tuesday evening for the expected storm to hit my front door. Garrett was standing out in the hallway, looking visibly agitated, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets as the rain beat heavily against the stairwell windows. He walked in, sat heavily at the kitchen table, and gave me that exact defensive, guilt-tripping look he had masterfully adopted from his wife. "Mom, come on. Why do you have to make everything so incredibly complicated?" he began, rubbing his forehead aggressively. "Brooke is losing her mind over her work schedule and the daycare calendar. Can't you just act normal instead of throwing a massive tantrum over a tiny seating arrangement at a birthday party?" I sat down directly across from him. I didn't offer him coffee. I didn't offer him a snack. And I didn't look away. I just stared at him in complete silence. It wasn't a tiny arrangement, Garrett, and I'm not arguing about it. I am simply informing you of my decision, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. He looked away, staring at the kitchen backsplash, and tried to play the emotional card. "We genuinely thought you loved feeling needed. Mom, Leo keeps asking why Grandma isn't coming over anymore. That cheap emotional manipulation didn't work on me anymore. I had seen this play cover to cover too many times to fall for it. If Leo wants to see me, he is more than welcome to visit me here on the weekend. But my days as your unpaid, Live-in housekeeper are officially over. I replied smoothly. Garrett stood up, thoroughly frustrated, muttered something under his breath about me being ungrateful, and stormed out, letting the front door slam a little too hard behind him the moment he left. A notification popped up on my tablet. It was a long, hostile email from Brooke containing an itemized breakdown of the gas money she claimed they had spent driving out to visit me over the past year. I deleted the email without reading the rest of it, opened my planner, and booked my next hair appointment instead. On Thursday morning, a large, official-looking envelope arrived in my mailbox. It wasn't a personal letter. It was an official notification from an auto finance company, mistakenly sent to my address because Brooke had tried to list me as a primary co-signer on a brand new luxury vehicle lease. She had done it entirely behind my back, using my old financial information that she must have copied from my tax documents during a previous visit. Not even 10 minutes later, the phone rang. This time it was Garrett, and his voice sounded incredibly tense, almost demanding. Mom, look, you still have the payout from Dad's life insurance sitting in your savings account. We urgently need $15,000 for the down payment on this new SUV. He went on to explain that their current car was supposedly unsafe for Leo, and that if I didn't step in, they were going to hit a financial wall. That money is staying exactly where it is. I am not putting a single dime toward a luxury vehicle you cannot afford, I said coldly. But we're family. Mom, you don't keep score over every little thing with family. It's not like you even need that money right now anyway, he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. The utter lack of respect was staggering. They didn't see my life savings as my security. They viewed it as their rightful inheritance that I was inconveniently hoarding. I manage my own life, Garrett, and it is high time you and Brooke learn how to finance yours, I said. Cutting the call short, I put on my coat, grabbed my wallet, and walked straight down to the local credit union branch. It was time to secure my financial affairs so that absolutely no one could ever access my data or my hard-earned savings again. If you found comfort or encouragement in the stories on Quiet Revenge, we'd simply like to say thank you. Our team works carefully on every story, while AI tools may assist with some parts of production. Each story is personally chosen, edited, reviewed, and prepared with care before it is shared. If you ever feel our work is worth supporting, we'd be grateful if you considered contributing the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family Co-FE, https://ko-fi.com/The Story Family, PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPal.me/Kanhuangmin. Whether you choose to support us or simply continue watching, thank you for being part of Quiet Revenge. At the credit union, I sat down with Mr. Davis, a senior financial advisor who had managed my accounts for over a decade and knew my family situation well. We sat in his quiet, private office while he pulled up my profile on his screen, his expression hardening as I explained what had happened. I instructed him to completely revoke the financial power of attorney I had granted Garrett years ago for emergencies, effective immediately. We changed the PINs on all my debit and credit cards and locked down my online banking profile. removing any authorized device access that Brooke might have secretly set up on her own phone. When I finally walked out of the building into the afternoon sun, a wave of profound relief washed over me. It felt like a physical weight had been lifted off my chest. On my walk home, I ran into my neighbor, Martha. She smiled warmly and asked if I wanted to head down to the local farmers market this Saturday morning and grab some brunch afterward. I agreed instantly, a simple social invitation I would have automatically rejected in the past, because I was always on standby to bail out the kids. Once I got back to my apartment, I went into the hall closet and pulled out every single toy, extra set of clothes, and stray item Leo had left over the years for his visits. I packed everything neatly into 2 heavy-duty shipping boxes, taped them secure, and scheduled a courier service to pick them up. I wanted no physical reminders of my role as their convenient disposable babysitter cluttering my space over dinner. I happily flipped through a travel brochure for a scenic Amtrak train tour through the mountains of Vermont, a trip I had dreamed of taking for years. As I finished my tea, my phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. "We're coming over Saturday morning to handle this like rational adults." I didn't bother typing a reply. I simply blocked his number for the weekend. Saturday afternoon was lovely and peaceful. I was sitting in my living room with Martha, enjoying a fresh pot of coffee and a homemade apple pie, when the front doorbell began to ring aggressively, over and over again. I opened the door to find Brooke standing in the hallway, her face flushed red with anger, holding tight to Leo's hand. Without waiting for an invitation, she shoved past me into the foyer, her eyes flashing with rage, completely ignoring the fact that I had company. "What is the absolute meaning of this? You blocked our numbers. And then you mail us these boxes," she hissed, gesturing wildly. "We have a massive commitment today, and Leo is staying here. You are watching him." Martha looked down uncomfortably at her coffee cup, while I stood completely still in my own hallway, leaving the front door wide open behind them. "Leo is not staying here today. Brooke, I have company, and my plans for the weekend are entirely set," I said, my voice a model of unshakable calm. Brooke let out a bitter, mocking laugh that echoed loudly through the entire apartment building. "You are being incredibly selfish. Being a grandmother is a lifelong obligation, not a hobby you just get to quit when you feel like it." Leo looked up, thoroughly confused and frightened by his mother's outburst. My heart twinged for my grandson, but I knew that if I gave in now, I would lose everything I had fought to reclaim. "Please leave my apartment immediately, Brooke, or I will have Martha call the building manager to have you removed for trespassing and disturbing the peace," I said softly, but with absolute steel in my tone. She saw the total lack of hesitation in my eyes, realized I wasn't going to budge an inch, and aggressively grabbed Leo's arm. She spun on her heel, shouting curses down the hallway as she stormed toward the elevator. I calmly closed the door, took a deep breath, and sat right back down across from my friend. Martha looked at me, gave a supportive nod, and said, "Good for you. Clara, life is too short to let people walk all over you." On Monday morning, I found an official email in my inbox from the administrator at Leo's daycare facility. Brooke had listed me as their primary emergency contact for years, meaning that the moment Leo had a minor cough or a scraped knee, I was the one expected to drop everything and rush over. I drafted a short, polite, formal response to the director, requesting that my name and all of my personal contact information be removed from their emergency files permanently. Effective immediately. Right after sending that, I checked my personal inbox and found a vicious email from Garrett, time-stamped at 2 in the morning. He wrote that the auto dealership had flat out denied their luxury lease because they lacked my co-signature, and that their financial situation was now in total jeopardy. They were finally realizing that my financial backing wasn't a given. Right, it was a privilege they had completely destroyed with their own arrogance. I felt absolutely no guilt, nor did I feel any petty satisfaction. It was just validation that my boundaries were working exactly as they were supposed to. Instead of typing out a long emotional reply, I printed out the confirmation from the daycare facility showing I was removed from the list, slipped it into an envelope, and mailed it to their house. Afterward, I walked down the street to the local travel agency and officially booked that week-long Amtrak trip through the Vermont mountains for next month. I paid the full amount up front with my new debit card, using the PIN that existed only in my head. On my walk back, I spotted Garrett's car idling near the corner of my block, but I simply turned down the pedestrian shopping avenue and went about my day. They were still looking to blame me for their problems, but I had officially opted out of the drama. It was Wednesday evening when Garrett finally reached me on my old landline phone, the single number I had left unblocked exclusively for true emergencies. His voice sounded completely broken, stripped of the usual smugness and entitlement that had defined him for the last few years. "Mom, please. The daycare called today. They said you removed yourself from the list. Brooke had to walk out of a massive presentation at work to pick Leo up," he whispered, sounding completely defeated. He went on to admit that their entire daily schedule had completely collapsed without my unpaid labor, and that they couldn't even afford to cover their basic expenses this month. "We are drowning over here. Brooke won't stop crying. Our credit cards are maxed out, and we are completely in the red. Please, just help us out one last time." I listened to him patiently, feeling my pulse quicken slightly, but I remained as steady as a rock. "This is the direct consequence of your own choices. Garrett, you and Brooke treated me like a servant you could just shove to the kitchen door when you didn't want to look at me," I said clearly. A long, agonizing silence filled the line. In the background, I could hear the faint, muffled sound of Brooke sobbing softly on the couch. "I am not giving you any more money, and I am done managing your schedules. You are adults, and you will have to figure out how to manage your own lives," I told him. "But we're family. Mom, how can you do this to us?" he pleaded, trying one last time to hook me with guilt. "We are family, Garrett, and in a real family. You show respect instead of using people until they have nothing left to give," I said, and firmly hung up the receiver. There was no screaming, no big dramatic showdown, just the quiet, undeniable weight of accountability landing squarely on their shoulders. A full month had passed, and I was standing on platform 3 at the train station, my small rolling suitcase packed neatly by my side as the morning sun warmed the platform. The Amtrak train bound for Vermont pulled up right on schedule, and I felt a beautiful, long-forgotten sense of excitement stir in my chest. A healthy, clear distance had finally formed between myself and my son's family. Realizing I wasn't coming back to save them, they had finally swallowed their pride, hired a local babysitter, and returned the expensive SUV lease they couldn't afford. Just yesterday, Garrett had sent me a brief, incredibly polite text message asking if Leo could come spend a weekend with me next month. I replied that he was more than welcome to visit from Saturday morning until Sunday afternoon, but strictly on my terms, with absolutely no drop-offs or last-minute changes from Brooke. They had finally learned the hard way that my time is valuable and that my boundaries are absolute if they want to have a relationship with me. I boarded the train, found my window seat in the quiet car, and lifted my suitcase into the overhead bin with ease. As the train smoothly pulled out of the station and the city skyline began to fade into the background, I looked out at the beautiful landscape and let out a long, peaceful breath. I hadn't won my dignity back by screaming or causing a scene. I won it back through quiet, immovable actions when it mattered most. My new life had officially begun, a life built on self-respect, independence, and a deep, authentic contentment that no one would ever be allowed to take away from me again. The days of being shoved to the edge of the table were over. From here on out, I was the one deciding exactly where I belonged. If you've found comfort or encouragement in the stories on Quiet Revenge, we'd simply like to say thank you. Our team works carefully on every story. While AI tools may assist with some parts of production, each story is personally chosen, edited, reviewed, and prepared with care before it is shared. If you ever feel our work is worth supporting, we'd be grateful if you considered contributing the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family. https://co-fi.com/The Story Family. PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPal me/Kan Huang-min. Whether you choose to support us or simply continue watching, thank you for being part of Quiet Revenge.